Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Oh, me? I'm just here busting my hide at this radical commune me and some other animals have established, trying to make it the bestest little farm we possibly can. And as far as a farm ran by animals goes, we wanted to make sure that we avoided some of those issues that plagued that other animal farm. You know, that animal farm. From that book Animal Farm by George of the Jungle Orwell. Now, it's been, God, almost 10 years since I last looked at Animal Farm, so I think it's about time for a refresher. How about you join me, huh? While we take a look at Animal Farm by Curious George Orwell, Penguin Group Publishing, 1945. By the end of this video, we will have looked at the key ideas of this text, who the characters are and what they represent, a synopsis of the story, why it is so often misunderstood and what that means, and what lessons we should glean from the story today. To start, let's look at the key idea of this text, which is to critique propaganda and authoritarianism, using the history of the Soviet Union from the Russian Revolution to World War II as a lens for this analysis. But this isn't a historical account of those events. It's an allegory. So the real world history gets all exaggerated and simplified, and everyone gets turned into farm animals, so that these critiques of propaganda and authoritarianism are more accessible for general audiences, aka the school kids who are obligated to read this book for their social studies class. Now, it turns out, despite Animal Farm being read and understood by school children, many folks, even adults, even political commentators, seem to misunderstand this story, thinking that it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of communism, that the propaganda and authoritarianism that take place in this story are essential aspects of communism. So the entire point of Animal Farm is reduced to, boo, communism bad. A glaring misreading of the text, which we'll analyze at the end of the video. For now, I'll simply say that if the lesson of Animal Farm is communism bad, that's a pretty weird lesson to make for literal avowed socialist George Jackson Orwell, author of Animal Farm. Anyways, because this story uses the history of the Soviet Union for its allegory, let's do a one-to-one of our various characters from this book and link them to their real-life counterparts so we can get a grasp on what we're working with. Regarding the human characters of the story, we have Mr. Jones, the corrupt and incompetent owner of Manor Farm, where the bulk of the story takes place. He is a stand-in for the corrupt and incompetent Tsar of Russia. Mr. Jones's neighbors, Mr. Pinkleton, the owner of Foxwood Farm, represents England, and the sadistic lunatic Mr. Frederick, the owner of Pinchfield Farm, represents Nazi Germany. And last but not least, Mr. Whymper, on his hustler entrepreneur grindset, represents the dirty, rotten capitalist pig. Pun intended. Because speaking of pigs, let's get to the animals of this animal farm, starting with the pig, Old Major, who represents the revolutionary-minded political philosopher, Karl Marx. The pig Napoleon represents the power-hungry authoritarian Stalin. Very subtle naming there. The pig Snowball represents the inventive and hopeful revolutionary Trotsky, and the pig Squealer represents the corrupt propagandistic media. Squealer? Another on-the-nose name. Or on the snout, maybe? The workhorse, Boxer, and his spouse Clover represent the working class, whereas the horse Molly, who likes sugar cubes and prancing around wearing ribbons in her mane, represents the wealthy upper class, what Marx called the petty bourgeois. The dogs in this story, Bluebell, Jessie, and Pincher, and their litter of puppies, represent the police, a comparison I hate every time I see it. I'm looking at you, Paw Patrol, Canine, Dogman, Cop Dog, Turner and Hooch. God, it makes me sick every freaking time that... Where was I? Right. The cat represents the petty criminal class. The rats represent the homeless peasants, what Marx called the lumpen proletariat. The crow, Moses, represents religion. Moses? Sheesh, George Bluth Orwell is even more obvious with his naming conventions than just kidding Rowling. Just a few more here. The hens represent the peasants, and the pigeons, who spread the news of Animal Farm to other farms, represents the spread and inspiration of revolutionary ideas. The goat Muriel represents the elderly, and again, last but again not least, the donkey Old Benjamin represents the political cynic. Or as the text puts it, Benjamin was the oldest animal on the farm, and the worst tempered. He seldom talked, and when he did, it was usually to make some cynical remark. Now, we're not going to get to every one of these characters in the upcoming synopsis, but we will discuss most of them as we go. So, keeping all this in mind, the story and corresponding real-world history goes as follows.
All the magic of spring was not enough to conceal the misery of Manor Farm.
The lousy drunk, Mr. Jones, mismanaging his farm and neglecting his animals, aka the Tsar of Russia mismanaging Russia and neglecting his citizens, well, Mr. Jones passes out from yet another night of drinking, and the animals hold a secret meeting in the barn, where the pig, Old Major, the Karl Marx stand-in, explains to the other animals their exploitation by humans and his theories for a new society where animals can live truly free. He states, "The life of an animal is misery and slavery. That is the plain truth. But is this simply part of the order of nature? Is it because this land of ours is so poor that it cannot afford a decent life for those who dwell upon it? No, comrades, 1,000 times no. Why then do we continue in this miserable condition? Because nearly the whole of the produce of our labor is stolen from us by human beings." Okay, cool. As a Karl Marx stand-in, that all sounds well and good so far. Old Major continues, "In fighting against man, we must not come to resemble him. Even when you have conquered him, do not adopt his vices. No animal must ever live in a house, or sleep in a bed, or wear clothes, or drink alcohol, or smoke tobacco, or touch money, or engage in trade. All the habits of man are evil. And, above all, no animal must ever tyrannize over his own kind. Weak or strong, clever or simple, we are all brothers. No animal must ever kill any other animal. All animals are equal." Foreshadowing is a literary device where, insert that classic H. Bomber Guy meme. But for reals, if you're familiar with this story at all, you know that these various rules, don't wear clothes, don't touch money, don't tyrannize over other animals, don't kill other animals, all animals are equal, they are exactly the rules that are betrayed over the course of the story. Spoiler alert, I guess, if you didn't know that. But I gotta say, I have a problem with this framing. If Old Major's theories about farm animals are an allegory for Marx's theories about capitalism, then this is completely inaccurate. Marx didn't precognition style theorize about a communist revolution in a way that step by step mirrored what Stalin would get wrong about it. Marx didn't write some list like don't wear clothes, don't drink alcohol, don't sleep in a bed, or whatever the human equivalent would be, and then Stalin methodically broke those rules. That just doesn't make any sense. It's like, imagine that you and a bunch of roommates agreed to follow a chore wheel consisting of like 10 or so household chores. The chore wheel keeps everything fair because the chores are distributed randomly, so no one is stuck doing one particularly hard or gross chore over and over again. And heck, let's say that you even have a household meeting once a month to decide if the chores on the chore wheel need to change. However, despite the democratic, egalitarian nature of this chore wheel, there is one roommate who routinely takes food and coffee into their bedroom and doesn't bring out the dirty dishes when they're done, making it difficult for the chore of doing the dishes to be completed. Everyone gets mad because there's never enough coffee cups and forks when people need them, and everyone in the house is just constantly arguing and bickering, and it falls apart and everyone moves out. Then, George Orwell decides to write a book about all this. But rather than discussing the chore wheel, he retroactively makes up a different agreement, like the roommates all agree thou shalt not have coffee cups in one's bedroom, so that he can write an allegory about why the roommate situation failed. But that wouldn't really be accurate. It wouldn't be an accurate telling of the story. George Orwell is putting the cart before the horse here. The horse being Boxer, to be precise. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Anyways, let's get back to the story. So right after laying out his theories about animal exploitation and liberation, Old Major becomes unalive, aka the 1984 YouTube censor-approved way of saying that Old Major just straight up dies. He dies before his dreams of revolution can be fulfilled. In Old Major's absence, the three little pigs, no, I think that's a different story. Three, I assume, regular-sized pigs, Napoleon, Snowball, and Squealer, they hold additional secret meetings in the barn so that they can elaborate and finalize Old Major's theories, creating a school of thought that they call animalism, aka this story's name for communism. Most of the animals are on board with animalism, but there are some skeptics. For example, the crow Moses argues that there's no point in struggling to turn the farm into a paradise. Instead, the animals should focus on the paradise of Sugar Candy Mountain. aka a name legally distinct from Big Rock Candy Mountain for copyright reasons. Aka Moses thinks that the animals, they shouldn't try and make their lives better in the here and now, they should wait for their reward in heaven, in the afterlife. Another skeptic, Molly, the petty bourgeois horse, asks if there will be sugar in a society based on animalism, aka asking if there will still be luxury consumer goods after the revolution. To which Snowball replies, "No, we have no means of making sugar on this farm." Despite the pigs developing these theories of animalism, they remain just theories, and life on the farm continues as normal, under the exploitation and poor management of Mr. Jones. But eventually, and despite the total lack of camels on the farm, there is a straw that breaks the camel's back. That being Mr. Jones passing out drunk and completely forgetting to feed his already malnourished animals, kicking off an animal rebellion as they angrily storm the granaries, liberating the food stores and having their fill. Not unlike other revolutions from the French Revolution, Russian Revolution, the types of mass expropriation of goods that writers like Peter Kropotkin and Alexander Berkman have written about, the common people of society taking all of the goods that are under lock and key and sharing them freely amongst themselves. But Mr. Jones isn't about to take this lying down. He runs out to stop the animals and they kick his hungover butt, driving him off the farm. And the crow Moses, aka Religion, he leaves too. Then the animals destroy all the relics of Mr. Jones's abusive rule, like the reins and blinders and whips used to control the animals, and the knives used to castrate and slaughter them. Boxer even destroys a hat that he likes to wear when it's too sunny out. The animals have a zero-tolerance policy for Mr. Jones' memorabilia, apparently. To cap off this rebellion, pun intended, get it, cap off, Boxer destroyed the hat that he liked. Anyways, to cap off this rebellion, the animals changed the name of the farm from Manor Farm to Animal Farm. Roll credits. Oh, wait, nope, that's not the end. The animals have gained their liberation, but now the real work for the animalism revolution must begin. To start, Snowball sets in stone, or rather paint, the tenets of animalism, as 7 commandments which are written on the side of the barn for all to see. That's kind of a cool idea. We should adopt that for our commune. Have the rules of the commune in a prominent public space for all to see. For the animals on Animal Farm, the commandments of animalism are as follows. 1. Whatever goes upon 2 legs is an enemy. 2. Whatever goes upon 4 legs or has wings is a friend. I feel like one kind of implies the other, but whatever. 3. No animal shall wear clothes. 4. No animal shall sleep in a bed. 5. No animal shall drink alcohol. 6. No animal shall kill any other animal. 7. All animals are equal. I have major problems with these commandments. Some key parts of Old Major's speech, they're totally missing from this list. Things like not engaging in trade or handling money, and that animals must not tyrannize over other animals. Or what about the positive things from Old Major's speech, like how animals can live in abundance and all that? No, rather than being logical commandments like a Bill of Rights or something, rather than making positive promises like the animals will live fulfilling lives free from human exploitation, no, these rules are all framed as punishments. Animalism is when no clothes. Animalism is when no alcohol, no beds. Playing right into the right-wing stereotype about like communism is when no iPhone. Framing both animalism and by extension communism as a poverty cult obsessed with limiting and punishing its adherents. And again, if you're familiar with the story, the importance of these rules are that they are slowly stripped away as Animal Farm goes from trying to fulfill the goals of animalism into something not unlike life under Mr. Jones, aka the corrupt authoritarian bully Stalin, betraying the communist revolution and becoming something similar to the corrupt authoritarian bully, the Tsar. But anyways, so the animals have a set of commandments, Mr. Jones is out, the animals are ready to roll up their metaphorical sleeves and get to it. Well, all of them except for the pigs, who don't do any of the physical work on the farm, they just act as managers to the other animals. As the text puts it, the pigs did not actually work, but directed and supervised the others. A coordinator class acting as the rulers of the working class, if you will, which might sound familiar if you've seen any of the videos we've done discussing participatory economics. This is definitely something I don't want to bring to our commune. You want to avoid recreating pointless hierarchies by letting some of the members have all of the empowering, supervising roles, while the rest of us just follow orders. We want to make sure that the types of work in the commune and the various benefits and perks that that work brings are shared among all of the members. But for the time being, the animal rebellion is a rousing success. As the text puts it, with the worthless, parasitical human beings gone, there was much more for everyone to eat. There was more leisure, too. Every Sunday, the animals held a general assembly where the work of the week was scheduled and resolutions were made. Oh, that's a good practice too to have on a commune, general assemblies. However, on Animal Farm, quote, it was always the pigs who put forward the resolutions. The other animals understood how to vote, but could never think of any resolutions of their own. You see, just as participatory economics predicts, the pigs, acting as the coordinators, the managers of their fellow workers, they basically control the discussions. They make the decisions. They are more equipped to create and propose resolutions. This is why we must share in the managerial and supervisor roles among all members of the community. Because if one person or a group of people monopolize the supervisor roles, they will have more access to the important information needed to run the show, and consequently they will have the most to contribute in the General Assembly. Not only this, but perhaps the individual or group having disproportionate say in the General Assembly will start giving themselves disproportionate rewards for their work. Maybe keep that in mind for later? Anyways, Snowball, this story's Trotsky, forms a bunch of animal committees, such as the Egg Production Committee, Clean Tails League, Wild Comrades Re-Education Committee, and so on, but these programs fail. However, Snowball's reading programs are a bit more successful.
This is the lowercase a.
The lower case A. Okay.
And this is the upper.
Enough! Do you want my head to explode?
Boxer, for example, well, he never learned how to read, but he learned a couple of letters. And the sheep, well, they couldn't memorize the 7 commandments of animalism, but they could memorize one slogan, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, with the text stating, Snowball declared that the 7 commandments could, in effect, be reduced to a single maxim, namely 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. This, he said, contained the essential principle of animalism. Oh boy, there are a few problems with all of this. For one, why were the various committees and reading programs so unsuccessful? I think for the allegory, their failure is probably supposed to speak to the propaganda and sloganism of the Soviet Union, but by making the story about animals, it runs into the Zootopia problem. Basically, in the movie Zootopia, the differences between how carnivores and herbivores are treated in an animal society is used as a metaphor for racism. The problem being that carnivores are genetically naturally dangerous to herbivores, where, if you didn't know this, people of color are not genetically naturally dangerous to white folks. As a metaphor for racism, it's completely inaccurate. And here in Animal Farm, having certain species of animals fail to work in committees or learn to read implies that certain segments of people, like the working class for example, is incapable of engaging in committees or learning to read, which is totally inaccurate. Secondly, by reducing all of animalism into one slogan, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, both the poverty cult stuff about animalism is when no clothes, animalism is when no beds, as well as the animal welfare stuff about thou shalt not kill other animals, all animals are equal, not to mention the other stuff about living in abundance and freedom, which isn't even part of the 7 commandments painted on the side of the barn. So much of animalism has been stripped away, leaving only this nationalistic us versus them slogan, devoid of any of the deeper meaning. I suppose not unlike the way terms like liberty, freedom of speech, or make America great again are used today.
When he was running in 2016, it was before he'd even been president, but he was still saying make it great again. Again from when?
That is a good question. I would say if I could guess it would be, and I think that they're very politically lined up, would be maybe with JFK.
Before he got there, he was saying "Make it great again." So he didn't think. What did that message mean to you then? What
I felt President Reagan was an excellent president too.
does that mean to you? The again part of that. When was it great to you?
Supposed to have been great in the founding era. Then it got changed in the middle 1800s, and I won't go into all the details because that's too long of a story.
But that was slavery and the Civil War.
Back in the story, the pig Napoleon has no use for Snowball's committees or educational programs, but he does decide to step into the role of educator when the dogs, Jessie and Bluebell, have a litter of puppies, whom Napoleon takes under his metaphorical wing, raising and educating them in secret. Hey, remember when I said perhaps the individual or group having disproportionate say in the General Assembly will start giving themselves disproportionate rewards for their work? Maybe keep that in mind for later? Well, now is later. The pigs aren't only hoarding the empowering work and instructing others and dominating the General Assemblies, they're also giving themselves special economic rewards in the form of apples and milk, with the propagandist pig Squealer justifying this injustice by telling the other animals, "We pigs are brain workers. The whole management and organization of this farm depends on us. Day and night, we are watching over your welfare. It is for your sake that we drink milk and eat those apples." Insert that meme that's like, my boss showed up to work in a brand new Lamborghini and said, if I work hard, put in extra hours and strive for excellence, he'll buy another one next year. You know the meme I'm talking about? Anyways, at this point in the story, with Animal Farm being largely successful, aside from some small hang-ups around the pigs dominating the empowering work and the General Assemblies and giving themselves the best rewards for their labor, small hang-ups that will in no way blow up to huge problems down the line. Aside from that, the farm is largely successful, and the pigs decide to send out messenger pigeons to the other farms to spread the success of the animal rebellion. It is here that we meet Mr. Pilkington of Foxwood Farm, representing England, and Mr. Frederick of Pinchfield Farm, representing Nazi Germany, who are both dreadfully nervous about animal rebellion breaking out on their own farms. So they start spreading rumors that the animals on Animal Farm are doing cannibalism and starving and living in squalor, because there's no way that animals could run a farm by themselves. Unfortunately for them, contrary rumors keep spreading that Animal Farm is actually doing really good, and that's inspiring the animals on other farms to start acting out. Not unlike political leaders in the US and Europe fearing worker rebellion inspired by the Russian Revolution, with the radical labor movement and later the civil rights movement kicking off during this era. As acts of animal rebellion spread throughout the land, the farmers decide to get together to stamp out Animal Farm, in a plot to stop Animal Farm from inspiring other animals to rebel. In the book, this invasion is called The Return of Jones, because it is when Mr. Jones returns to the farm, of course. It's also called the Battle of Cowshed, because the cowshed is where the animals lead the humans into an ambush. In the battle, Snowball gets shot in the leg by Mr. Jones, but ultimately Snowball still kicks his butt. The animals win, and the humans are once again driven off of Animal Farm. This battle being an allegory for the October Revolution, which, if you don't know, was this battle in which, on one side, you have this provisional government that was established after the overthrow of the Tsar of Russia, with this provisional government siding with the US and England, continuing its fight in World War I against the wishes of the Russian people. And on the other side, you have the Bolsheviks with Lenin and Trotsky fighting for revolutionary change, peace and bread, and US and England and like a dozen other nations intervene and try and crush the Bolshevik Revolution and save the provisional government, but they fail, the Bolshevik Revolution succeeds, and the Soviet Union is established. Back to the story. As the new revolutionary government of Animal Farm continues doing its work, the pig Snowball, again the Trotsky of the story, begins reading books and comes up with all these ideas to improve the farm. One of which is to build a windmill. As Snowball puts it, a windmill which could be made to operate a dynamo and supply the farm with electrical power. This would light the stalls and warm them in winter, and would also run a circular saw, a chaff cutter, a mango slicer, and an electric milking machine. This all sounds good, but it must be put to a vote, and the animals are split into two factions. On one side, the authoritarian Stalin stand-in, the pig Napoleon, is pushing for a focus on food production and increasing the population and increasing their military might to prepare for future attacks from the humans. He's running on the slogan, "Vote for Napoleon and the full manger." On the other side, the forward-thinking Snowball is promoting building the windmill and industrializing, improving the animals' standard of living, with the belief that the animals will avoid further human invasions by spreading the ideals of animalism to other farms, outcompeting the humans in the marketplace of ideas, so to speak. He's running on the slogan, "Vote for Snowball and the 3-day week." Many of the animals side with Snowball, but the sheeple, side with Napoleon, and they keep interrupting the General Assembly by shouting, "4 legs good, 2 legs bad." Old Benjamin, the political cynic, abstains from voting and concludes that life will go on as it always had gone on, that is, badly. The animals are about to finalize the vote, but just then, a pack of dogs storms in. It turns out the puppies that Napoleon had been raising in secret are now full grown, and they work as his obedient personal secret police. The dogs chase Snowball off the farm, and voting is canceled, and Napoleon takes his seat as the dictator of Animal Farm. Okay, let me look at my notes so far on how to run a commune successfully. Right now we have make the rules of the commune publicly visible. That sounds good. Share in the empowering and managerial work. Okay. And, don't overthrow the democratic process with secret police and install a dictator. What are you thinking? Okay, so one of Napoleon's first acts as dictator is to replace the weekly general assemblies with private meetings held in secret by a special council of pigs.
Let's have no more of these useless meetings. Eh? From now on, I'll protect your interests. And I'll make your decisions.
One more thing to add to the list. Don't replace weekly democratic meetings with a secret council. Anyways, in one such meeting, Napoleon puts forward this ingenious plan. This totally new, totally his idea thing that no one's thought of. The animals should build a windmill. Boxer, the horse representing the working class, and Old Benjamin the cynic are tasked with leading this project. This is intended to represent the forced industrialization of the Soviet Union, the 5-year plan and all that turned it from a feudal society to an industrial one. Boxer and Old Benjamin slaving away building this windmill as Napoleon lives high on the hog, pun intended. On top of all this, Mr. Moneybags, Mr. Whimper, he goes to Animal Farm to speak with Napoleon, opening up a line of trade between Animal Farm and human society, breaking the animalism conventions around trade and handling money. The other animals protest this, but Squealer insists that rules against trade and handling money were never actually passed, so no rules were broken. Which is true. Old Major talked about avoiding trade and money in his speech, but that was never made one of the 7 commandments of animalism. But don't worry, the 7 commandments of Animal Farm will start getting violated soon enough. Like right now, as the pigs move into Mr. Jones's house and start sleeping in his bed, with the 4th commandment of Animal Farm being altered to read, "No animal shall sleep in a bed with sheets." The other animals try to remember if the commandment had ever said something different, but with time they're convinced that no changes have been made. Life on the farm continues in this way for a while, but then there's this terrible storm, and lightning hits the windmill that Boxer and Old Benjamin have been constructing, and it gets destroyed, mirroring the failure of the 5-year plan of the Soviet Union, where, yes, they had rapid industrialization, but at the same time there was shortages in consumer goods, political repression, famine, stuff like that. Like many other authoritarian leaders we might name, Napoleon is never to blame for the shortcomings of his plans. Perish the thought. No, it's actually Snowball's fault. He has been sabotaging everything from behind the scenes. And from here on out, Snowball's part in the history of Animal Farm is completely rewritten to make him a spy of Mr. Jones, an enemy of Animal Farm. Napoleon commands that the windmill be rebuilt with thicker walls, making it more secure. However, work is hard going because winter's approaching. Every shortcoming and failure getting blamed on Snowball and his spies. Comrade Snowball, you mean evil enemy of Animal Farm Snowball, Napoleon says? Adding to my list, on your commune, do not scapegoat your problems onto others. Due to the pigs' insatiable exploitation of the farm, in conjunction with Napoleon's authoritarian, centralized, ineffective management, the animals on the farm are starving. It's not just rumors anymore, the animals are starting to have a bad time. To help shore up losses, Napoleon makes an agreement to sell all of the chickens' eggs to the humans, violating a previous promise that the chickens would not have to sell their eggs. In response, the chickens kick off the biggest act of rebellion since the animal rebellion that overthrew Mr. Jones in the first place. The plan is, the chickens will lay their eggs on top of the barn, so they'll roll off and splatter on the ground. Napoleon demands the chickens have their rations ended so long as this strike is taking place, and any animals caught helping the chickens, they'll have their rations cut as well. Several chickens starved to death over the course of this strike, reflecting the Holodomor of the Soviet Union, where millions of people in Ukraine died of starvation due to horrible mismanagement leading to famine, or forced starvation, or some combination of the two, depending on who you ask. This struggle for independence between Ukraine and Russia basically continuing to this day. Napoleon calls for a meeting with his dogs, demanding that they catch and kill Snowball's spies, and several animals are brought in for judgment. 4 pigs falsely confess to helping Snowball destroy the windmill, and they're killed on the spot. These 4 pigs just happen to be the same 4 pigs who protested Napoleon replacing the General Assemblies with secret meetings. 3 chickens are also rounded up and killed for being in cahoots with Snowball. These chickens just so happen to be the ones who organized the strike against the selling of their eggs. As the text puts it, the tale of confessions and executions went on until there was a pile of corpses lying before Napoleon's feet, and the air was heavy with the smell of blood, which had been unknown since the expulsion of Jones. This event represents the Great Purge or Great Terror in the Soviet Union, where millions of people were killed as Trotsky's ideas and influence was violently suppressed, and party officials who were critical of Stalin were rounded up and killed or sent off to gulags. As Animal Farm descends into an authoritarian police state, as bad if not worse than the tyranny of Mr. Jones, the horse Clover thinks to herself, they had come to a time when no one dares speak his mind, when fierce growling dogs roamed everywhere, when you had to watch your comrades torn to pieces after confessing to shocking crimes. There was no thought of rebellion or disobedience in her mind. Shortly after this, the 6th commandment is changed to read, no animal shall kill any other animal without cause. And again, the animals try and remember the original commandment, but they can't, and they're convinced that no changes have been made to the ideals of animalism. Rumors reach Animal Farm that on Pinchfield Farm, aka Nazi Germany, the animals are being horribly abused, aka the Holocaust. As the text explains it, terrible stories were leaking out from Pinchfield about the cruelties that Frederick practiced upon his animals. He had flogged an old horse to death. He starved his cows. He had killed a dog by throwing it into the furnace. He amused himself in the evenings by making cocks fight with splinters of razor blade tied to their spurs. The animals of Animal Farm, of course, hate what is going on. They hate what they're hearing about Pinchfield Farms. But luckily, Napoleon has only been trading their goods with Foxwood Farm, representing England. Oops. It turns out Napoleon was secretly trading with Pinchfield Farm as well. This mirroring the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the non-aggression agreement between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Folks who are pro-Soviet Union would point out that the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is not that big a deal. It's just a byproduct of the Munich Agreement between England and Nazi Germany a year earlier, which totally appeased Hitler and gave him Czechoslovakia. The Soviet Union was merely biding their time to build up their army in the face of European appeasement of the Nazis. I mean, heck, something like 4/5 of the deaths of World War II took place between Germany and the Soviet Union. While folks who are more skeptical of the Soviet Union, on the other paw, would argue that, sure, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was a non-aggression pact and not a full-on alliance, but there was a lot of sharing between the Nazis and the Soviet Union. For example, a secret protocol to ignore each other's annexation of neighboring countries, and an agreement to split Poland, among other little goodies. Anyways, this was all for nothing, it turns out, because the money Animal Farm received from Pinchfield Farm, aka Nazi Germany, it was counterfeit money, and Animal Farm is invaded for a second time by the humans who blow up the Animal Farm windmill with dynamite. This fight is called the Battle of Stalingrad, Napoleongrad, the Battle of the Windmill, a decisive victory for the Soviets over the Nazis. Animal Farm against the humans. with both the animals in the story and the Soviets in the real history facing huge losses. In celebration of their victory over the humans, Napoleon and his administration open a distillery and make some whiskey, changing the 5th commandment of Animal Farm to read, "No animal shall drink alcohol to excess," which they do anyway. They end up getting really drunk and hungover. As the animals of Animal Farm continue to starve and live under political suppression, their leisure time gets filled up with rallies and marches and celebrations, celebrating Napoleon and the accomplishments of Animal Farm. You know, bread and circuses, make Animal Farm great again, and all that. As the text puts it, truth to tell, Jones and all he stood for had almost faded out of their memories. They knew that life nowadays was harsh and bare, that they were often hungry and often cold, and that they were usually working when they were not asleep. But doubtless it had been worse in the old days. They were glad to believe so. Besides, in those days they had been slaves, and now they were free. Shortly after this, quote, "It was laid down as a rule that when a pig or any other animal met on a path, the other animal must step aside, and also that all pigs, of whatever degree, were to have the privilege of wearing green ribbons on their tails on Sundays." This violating the 7th commandment on equality and the 3rd commandment about wearing clothes. As the animals' lives continue to worsen, the crow Moses, symbolizing religion, returns to preach to these destitute and desperate animals the wonders of Sugar Candy Mountain. And the animals are more susceptible to this delusion, opiate of the masses and all that, as their lives have gotten so miserable. I'm sure maybe you've seen that graph about the correlation between poverty and religious belief around the world. Since the Battle of the Windmill, Boxer and Old Benjamin have, 3rd time's the charm, began rebuilding the windmill. But this time, Boxer's much older than he was first time around, and he gets injured badly in a construction accident. But thankfully, for his years of good service, Napoleon agrees to have Boxer taken to a hospital so he could be treated. Oh, wait a minute, Boxer isn't being picked up by a veterinarian. Old Benjamin yells, "Fools, do you not see what is written on the side of that van? Alfred Simmons, horse slaughterer and glue boiler. Willingdon, dealer in hides and bone meal. Kennels supplied." Napoleon has sold out Boxer, symbolizing the Soviet Union selling out the working class. And as an added irony, horses are used to pull the van taking Boxer to the slaughterhouse. Despite the animals knowing and seeing with their own eyes what was done to Boxer, the propagandist Squealer announces that Boxer had died in the hospital, and that his last words were, "Forward in the name of the rebellion. Long live Animal Farm. Long live Comrade Napoleon. Napoleon is always right." Years pass, and as they do, the animals continue to forget the past. They forget what it was like living under Mr. Jones. They forget about the rebellion, Snowball, and Boxer. The windmill is never used for lights or heating beds for the animals as promised, but instead it's used to mill corn, which is sold to the humans for profit. As the text states, the luxuries of which Snowball had once taught the animals to dream, the stalls with electric light and hot and cold water, and the 3-day week, were no longer talked about. Napoleon had denounced such ideas as contrary to the spirit of animalism. The truest happiness, he said, lay in working hard and living frugally. Normally I would totally disagree with this. Old Major talked about the animals living in abundance, but the commandments don't talk about that at all. The commandments are all like, don't sleep in beds, don't wear clothes. So it seems like animalism is about living frugally. Communism is when no iPhone and all that. The animals, though, they don't buy it. They wonder why it is the pigs don't seem to work hard or live frugally. But Squealer explains it all, arguing that the pigs had to expend enormous labors every day upon mysterious things called files, reports, minutes, and memoranda. These were large sheets of paper which had to be closely covered with writing, and as soon as they were so covered, they were burnt in the furnace. This was of the highest importance for the welfare of the farm, Squealer said. And if you've read the book B.S. Jobs by David Graeber, or Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, or you've seen the movie Office Space, or you've had a job ever, then you're more than familiar with what's going on here. It is the bureaucratic web, the busywork, the memos, the meetings, the glut of middle management.
Well, hello there. Looking to get some insurance?
No, my friend's mom already has insurance with your company. We're here to file a claim for my friend's medication.
Oh, you want money from us? Right through that door over there.
And if the animals thought that the tyrannical leadership of Napoleon caused their hunger and hardship and disappointment, well, no, it didn't. Because, quote, if they went hungry, it was not from feeding tyrannical human beings. If they worked hard, at least they worked for themselves. No creature among them went upon 2 legs. No creature called any other creature master. All animals were equal. Well, okay, some of those things are true, but not for long. The sheeple, the ever-loyal subjects of the pigs, they are seen marching behind Napoleon's administration and shouting, 4 legs good, 2 legs better, as the pigs lead the procession, walking on their hind legs. This brings us to the first of 2 major conclusions of the text, which I will quote at length. Benjamin felt a nose nuzzling his shoulder. He looked around. It was Clover. Her old eyes looked dimmer than ever. Without saying anything, she tugged gently at his mane and led him around to the end of the big barn, where the 7 commandments were written. For a minute or 2, they stood gazing at the tarred wall with its white lettering. "My sight is failing," she said finally. "Even when I was young, I could not have read what was written there. But it appears to me that that wall looks different. Are the 7 commandments the same as they used to be, Benjamin?" For once, Benjamin consented to break his rule, and he read out to her what was written on the wall. There was nothing there now except a single commandment. It ran, "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others." This is the completion of Animal Farm's abandonment of their founding principles, of animalism. Things have degraded so much, the pigs have begun wearing Mr. Jones's clothing and using whips on the other animals. The story ends with human farmers sitting down for a meeting with the pigs inside Mr. Jones's house, and Napoleon explains that the animals are now more exploited, I mean more efficient than ever. The farm has never been more profitable. And Napoleon offers to help the humans model their farms after Animal Farm's success. With the text concluding, 12 voices were shouting in anger. They were all alike. No question now what had happened to the faces of the pigs. The creatures outside looked from pig to man, and from man to pig, and from pig to man again. But already it was impossible to say which was which. Well, before getting to my conclusion, a little side tangent. Not to call George Orwell a one-trick pony, pun intended, but giving this book a second read just now, it's like he took the key events of this book and then just repackaged them into 1984. Like, look at all the similarities here. Napoleon changing which of the 2 neighboring farms, Foxwood Farm or Pinchfield Farm, that Animal Farm was trading with, that mirrors the changing alliances between Oceania and Eurasia and East Asia in 1984. The hypocrisy of the sheep chanting the slogan, 4 legs good, 2 legs better, at the end of the text mirrors the official slogan of the party in 1984, which is, of course, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Napoleon blaming all the problems of the farm on the secret actions of the mysterious, nefarious Snowball is just like the 2 Minutes of Hate in 1984, where the party blames all of their problems on the secret actions of the mysterious, nefarious Emmanuel Goldstein. Napoleon's dogs tearing apart dissidents and political critics is like Big Brother having people locked up and tortured for wrongthink. And the animals constantly forgetting the original goals of animalism as Napoleon and especially the propagandist Squealer rewrite the history of Animal Farm. It's just like the Ministry of Truth rewriting and memory holding the history of Oceania in 1984. But maybe that's just me. Side tangent aside, let's ask an important question. Is Animal Farm a critique of communism? No, it isn't. Now, I've already talked about how George Romero Orwell is an avowed socialist, but it's deeper than that. My theory is that folks think that Animal Farm is a critique of communism because this is a story of a communist commune descending into totalitarianism based on the real-world history of the Soviet Union. And so that means this book is a critique of something that's essential about communism and about how it always falls into authoritarianism. However, socialist George Darling Orwell, he probably actually saw the propaganda and authoritarianism of the Soviet Union not as a natural outcome of communism, but as a betrayal of communism, right? I think about it this way. I'm sure you have seen the first 3 Star Wars movies. The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. Those movies are great, with such memeable lines as, "I hate sand, it gets everywhere. It's over, Anakin, I have the higher ground, now this is pod racing," and all that. Well, you see, George Lucas Orwell wasn't telling a story about how democracy always falls into fascism, therefore Star Wars is a cautionary tale about how democracy bad. No, the goal with those films was to show how even a democratic republic can fall into fascism. Vote in fascism even, given the right conditions. When the Galactic Republic, in a time of crisis, was manipulated into voting in a supreme chancellor, who then converted the republic into a galactic empire, with Emperor Palpatine as the fascist dictator. So this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause and all that. And I think it's the same here. The story of Animal Farm isn't about communism's natural fall into authoritarianism, but that any political system, even a totally democratic, egalitarian, peaceful, high-minded commune, can fall into authoritarianism if things go wrong. And by mistaking Animal Farm as an anti-communist allegory, the lessons from this text simply become communism is when propaganda and authoritarianism, so to avoid that, don't do communism. Communism bad. And the real lessons about how propaganda and authoritarianism can come to dominate even the most democratic communal societies, it's completely lost. And you know what? I'm going to level with you. I didn't start a radical commune. I'm not on some farm ran by animals right now. That was just a framing device. A bit. The truth is, I'm still living in my apartment in the city. And right now, and maybe you're feeling it too, the lessons that Animal Farm teaches us about authoritarianism and how it takes shape in society are pretty relevant. Not just for a hypothetical commune invented as a bit, but as lessons that we can grapple with in our lives right now. Lessons like, authoritarians are incapable of following their own rules. We saw this in the text, when Napoleon had to keep changing the literal commandments of Animal Farm in order to enact his authoritarian rule. And we see this with other authoritarians as well. Some god who, in the book of Exodus 20:13, tells you, "Thou shalt not kill," and then a few pages later in Numbers 31:16 says, "Kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man." Or what about a president who says that China is eating our lunch, we need to put tariffs on China and make America great again, and then puts that slogan on hats that are made in China? As Saul Alinsky wrote in Rules for Radicals, they can no more obey their own rules than the Christian church can live up to Christianity. What about all the recuperation that takes place in the story? Napoleon putting on all of these rallies and celebrations, valorizing and honoring the animal rebellion as he distorts and betrays that very rebellion. The corrupt leader repackaging the ideals of a society and using it for their own benefit. Putin wanting to return Russia's borders to their previous locations, calling back to Russia's former greatness, while totally betraying the ideals that those first revolutionary thinkers were fighting for. Trump valorizing the Constitution and putting it in that Trump Bible that he's selling, while at the same time flippantly suggesting that the Constitution should be suspended. What about the text's lessons about rewriting history? The doublethink of the story. The animals being called equal, while the pigs are clearly living lives of privilege compared to the other animals on the farm. Boxer being sold to a slaughterhouse in front of the animals' eyes, while they're being told that he went to a hospital and died a hero. Trump saying that the trade deal with Canada and Mexico was a terrible deal, even though it was his deal from his previous presidency. Elon Musk saying that he's pro-free speech when he has blocked more accounts during his ownership of Twitter than the previous 13 years before he'd purchased it. How about the subversion of the democratic process? I mean, that's been a key feature of authoritarianism from time immemorial. The pig Napoleon getting rid of the General Assemblies, reflecting the Soviet Union banning independent trade unions. Leaders like Caesar, Hitler, Napoleon, Stalin, even Palpatine making themselves supreme rulers over their respective governments. Trump passes most of his agenda not through legislation with Congress, but through executive orders. And in the most extreme case, this dogie thingy, where totally unelected and unknown bureaucrats are dismantling and shutting down various aspects of the federal government.
Hey everybody, I'm here with multiple members of Congress. We're here to go to the Department of Education to fight for education, and they have locked the doors. They're not letting us in. It says all access entrance. There's this random guy out here who's refusing to let us in.
His name is
And
Jim
right here,
Harefield.
what's his name?
His name is Jim Harefield.
And right here, they have armed officers as well, acting like we're dangerous. A year ago, I'd be able to walk into this building and not be locked out. This is what they're doing. Elon is allowed in, but not you. Not your elected representatives, not parents, not students. Elon can go in, his goons can go in, but not the representatives of the people.
How about revenge?
Such a lust for revenge?
When authoritarians come to power, who do they wield that power against? As Robert Caro famously put it, what I believe is always true about power is that power always reveals. When you have enough power to do what you always wanted to do, then you see what the guy always wanted to do. And we see this all the time, whether it's the pig Napoleon or Stalin committing purges of their political adversaries, or Donald Trump going after regulations, and journalists, and pollsters, and lawyers, and judges, and political opponents, and hell, even political allies. When authoritarianism is afoot, revenge abounds. And to be fair, we're not blameless in the rise of authoritarianism either. For example, what about the historical amnesia? As a dog, I'm a little offended at the level of forgetfulness of the animals in this text. Kind of insulting my intelligence here, Mr. George Harrison Orwell. You're not going to get me to believe that these farm animals so easily forgot the commandments of their own society. And they can't remember their own lives under a totally different political and economic system. And forgetting, things like, forgetting... what was I talking about? Right, forgetfulness. Something that we do seem to do more and more of these days, as the news cycles get faster and faster. I mean, think about it. What happened to the drag queens reading books to kids? Is that still going on? I have no idea. It was all over the news for a bit, and now who cares? Whatever happened to critical race theory? I read a book on critical race theory when it was getting really, really talked about a lot, but by the time I read the book and then wrote a script and then edited a video for it, it wasn't in the news anymore. The same is probably going to happen with terms like DEI and woke. Hell, during Trump's re-election campaign, he kept asking crowds if they were better off 4 years ago, with the explicit answer being yes, because apparently the people at his rallies totally forgot that 4 years ago was the middle of the COVID lockdowns, when the economy was in turmoil, social unrest abound, and everyone was miserable. It's sad, but brutally accurate. Historical amnesia, it's a great tool for authoritarians and their propagandists. It's a horrible barrier to democracy and justice. As Milan Kundera famously put it, the struggle of man against power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. When we forget the past, we give others the power to lie about it. We make ourselves susceptible to manipulation. So, yeah, in the coming years, let's keep all this in mind. The manipulation of propagandists and the rise of authoritarianism through breaking our rules and laws, recuperation of our ideals, rewriting and lying about our history, subverting our democratic processes, and seeking vengeance on their critics. And all of this often happening to us unimpeded thanks to our own historical amnesia. Animal Farm may not be the anti-communist masterpiece many mistake it to be, but its lessons about propaganda and authoritarianism remain relevant to this day. So, if you haven't checked it out in a while, why not give it another read? I mean, it's pretty short. You can read it in 6 hours or so. I think understanding how authoritarianism can come to power in society might end up being something worth understanding these days. And as always, I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons. You've allowed me to support other creators I couldn't otherwise support. Gotta love that. You provide me with a little extra funds for books and dog toys and things like that, which is really awesome. I appreciate you folks a lot. And if you like what I do here and you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/radicalreviewer. And if you're interested in radical theory, looking for a book recommendation or whatever, then you can get your radical reviews here with the Radical Reviewer. Thanks for watching.
Everybody knows. Go to work and sell your mother Everyone lies, everybody trying to turn up. The racks get to the stacks.
Oh, there were so many other great George names I could have used. George Nada Orwell, from They Live. Or maybe George Wydell Orwell from Devil's Rejects? George R.R. Orwell? George R. Martin Orwell? Okay, anyway, okay, bye.